Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Andrew Schiff. I'm the CEO here at the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Thank you for joining us today for our town hall meeting. Today we're going to be focused on Rhode Island farms and how we provide locally grown food to people in need in Rhode Island. You've heard of farm to table. This is farm to food bank. After I talk a little bit about why this is a priority for the food bank, you'll be hearing from our guests. Sheri Griffin from Farm Fresh, Rhode Island, Agudelo from Hope's Harvest, and then Pam and Chip Thurlow from Franklin Farm Community Garden in Cumberland. They'll each be able to tell you about their experience during the past year of the pandemic and also about their plans for the future. I want to mention that we have Spanish translation available during this meeting. If you want to listen in Spanish, click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen. Looks like a globe, and select Spanish. Also, if at any time you want to ask a question, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen, type in your question, and we'll make sure that we can answer all of your questions before we end. At the food bank, we try to provide the most nutritious food possible to people in need. We know that food insecurity and poor nutrition are closely linked, and food insecure adults are at high risk for diet-related conditions like diabetes. And in the past year, we saw tragically that diet-related conditions made COVID-19 even more dangerous and life-threatening. So to promote good health and nutrition, at the food bank, we're distributing more fruits and vegetables than ever before, and a lot more is coming from Rhode Island farms and farmers. And we're really lucky to have many farms that donate to the food bank. We also are very fortunate to have farms that specifically grow food for the food bank, like Franklin Farm, and you'll be hearing from Franklin Farm in a little bit. We have farms that partner with Hope's Harvest, allowing their fields to be gleaned, and Ava's here to talk more about that. And during the pandemic, there was a federal program called Farmers to Families. And Farm Fresh Rhode Island operated that program, and we worked with them to be able to provide boxes of fresh produce and other Rhode Island products to people in dire need. I was able to attend a distribution of the Farmers to Families boxes in Central Falls at our great partner in Central Falls, Progresso Latino. And in one morning, we served thousands of people. And that program was a tremendous help when we really, really needed to get as much food as possible out to people who were at high risk for hunger. When that federal program ended, we said to ourselves, we have to continue to work with Farm Fresh. There has to be ways that we can collaborate together and keep this work going, and that's exactly what we're doing. So this is a really good moment for me to welcome Sheri from Farm Fresh. Sheri Griffin is the co-executive director at Farm Fresh Rhode Island with Jesse Rye. Sheri, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew. That was a great introduction, and I just get so excited when I talk about the partnership with the food bank and also with Hope's Harvest, we'll hear about in a minute. Farm Fresh Rhode Island, briefly, is a nonprofit. We began in 2004 as a student project and have grown really steadily since then, sort of buoyed up by the great interest in local farms and the amazing local farms that we have here in Rhode Island. Farm Fresh has always had a commitment to working to support those experiencing food insecurity and trying to connect farmers and all eaters in Rhode Island, regardless of their socioeconomic status, their race, gender, ethnicity. We try really hard to make sure that local farming connects with everybody in the state. And so we have made a commitment to providing financial assistance to households on SNAP to shop at farmers markets. We provide nutrition education programming in public schools, public libraries, senior centers. So have always had a value around connecting um, this part of the food system. And during the beginning of the pandemic, um, there was so much food insecurity and so much need, and farmers were facing a really difficult decision to make around how much they would plant for the coming season, how they would handle their business plan, knowing that many of the wholesale customers they rely upon had closed, that universities, a major wholesale customer for a lot of local farms, shut down their dining programs. Restaurants, we have an amazing restaurant community in Rhode Island, as we all know, fully support local growers, and they had to close their doors as well. So the conversation with the food bank around the Farmers to Families box program was critical both for the food insecure in Rhode Island, but also for the local growing community, including produce farmers and also dairy farmers. So we moved over 13,000 of the Farmers to Families boxes in the time frame that the program was operational, and had many farmers reach out to us and tell us how important that program was to keeping their farm going, providing them security that they would be able to sell during the pandemic in such uncertainty. And it was absolutely a win, win, win. And so when the program ended, it was just so natural that we would seek to continue that program with the food bank. And it's such important work, and it's really helping us understand how much more a role, how much bigger a role that local farms can play in the hunger relief um, area of the food system in Rhode Island. So I am over the moon about working with the food bank on this program. It really is such a full manifestation of what we've been trying to do around food insecurity for many years now. So I think that's the end of that portion of what I had to say.
I wanted to ask you to say a little bit about farmers markets and plans to help folks who use SNAP benefits.
Right. So to explain that a little bit more fully, thank you, Andrew. Um, we have, um, so we run about 8 farmers markets in the state of Rhode Island. Thank you. That's a lovely picture of one of our markets. That's Broad Street, Saturdays in the summertime and fall. Um, and we have always cited our markets in area in neighborhoods that are low to moderate income. And part of our belief of connecting, farms with all communities in Rhode Island, that we have an amazing population of BIPOC farmers and seek to connect them with really diverse audiences, people growing culturally appropriate food for one another. One of the challenges around local agriculture is that prices are often more expensive for growers than they would naturally be in a place such as Florida or California or parts of the Midwest. And so we facilitate a program. We seek the funding and implement it across all of Rhode Island. And we're actually the lead organization on a federal grant that funds this for most of New England. And it provides incentives for SNAP shoppers to purchase additional fruits and vegetables at farmers markets. So when a SNAP shopper goes to a market and they charge $20 on their SNAP card to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables, they get an additional $20. And that program has been around since 2009. We've been funding it since then. We've done over $1 million in incentives, and that goes to the food insecure shopper and then straight to the local grower. And so last year, our usage of that program was up sharply. We distributed over $190,000 in incentives across the state of Rhode Island. And so it does make a difference for, again, both the food insecure and local shoppers. And my cat really likes it when I work from home. So
Thank you, Sheri.
you're welcome.
Now I'd like to turn to Ava Agudelo, the founder and executive director of Hope's Harvest. Hope's Harvest is addressing two, critical challenges, both how do we help people who are at risk of hunger, and also how do we deal better with food waste and preventing food waste. So Ava, welcome. I'm glad to turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you all so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides. And I also want to apologize in advance. Of course, they're doing sidewalk work outside of my house. So if you hear any loud booms, that's what's going on. So again, thanks so much for having me here. I'm just going to jump right in. A lot of you are pretty familiar with what Hope's Harvest does, but I'm going to give kind of an overview. Obviously, we know this figure really well. This is data from the food bank. We're so grateful to have this information, but it shows that we have a real significant problem with hunger in Rhode Island, and it's only been increasing over the past year. So what not everybody knows quite as much about, maybe in this room, is about food waste. And again, as Andrew said, we're trying to address that issue as well. So this is some information from Refed, which is a great organization. You can see that food waste happens all across the spectrum of the food system, but we really focus here on farms. About 21% of all food that's wasted in the United States is wasted on farms at the farm level, about $14 billion worth. So the important thing to note here is that nobody's doing anything wrong when food goes to waste on farms. Farmers do amazing work growing food, and they actually usually grow more than they need to meet their market demand to adjust for some of the challenges that can come up. So there's weather issues, you get good or bad weather. They can't afford to have people go out and harvest food if they're not going to be able to sell it. There's sometimes experimental crops that are happening. Sometimes food's too big or too small to fit into the box. Cauliflowers can get to the size of your torso, I've been told. So there's lots of reasons why food goes to waste at farms. And a lot of times that food often goes to feed animals, or it gets composted or tilled into the fields. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's edible food and it can feed people, we want to make sure it goes to its highest and best use. So Hope's Harvest's mission is to improve the livelihoods of local farmers, increase food security for Rhode Island's most vulnerable residents, and get everyone engaged in strengthening the food system by eliminating on-farm food waste in Rhode Island. Well, how do we do that? Pretty basic. We recruit volunteers from the community. We recover surplus food from farmers' fields with those volunteers. We go out and harvest food. And then we pack it up and we distribute it out to hunger relief agencies, which includes the food bank. Deceptively simple graphic, a little bit more complicated in practice. These are some of the farms that we partner with all over the state of Rhode Island and in southeastern Massachusetts. We're really proud to be working with as many farms as we are. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them are somewhere in between. So we're really trying to meet farmers where they're at in terms of being able to recover food whenever it's available. Volunteers are an incredibly important part of what we do. This is all these pictures are pre-COVID, so there are no masks on, but we pride ourselves on being an activity that is not only an opportunity to do good, but also socially distanced, safe, and a way for people to be together safely at this time. And that's something that's been really powerful for the folks who volunteer with us. These are some of the agencies we've distributed to. Obviously, the Rhode Island Community Food Bank is on this list. A lot of these agencies are also member agencies of the food bank. So we're really proud to be working with them and have gotten a lot of joy from being able to support the incredible work that agencies are doing, distributing food to individuals. We, like the food bank, also don't distribute food to individuals. We mostly just distribute to agencies. In terms of the numbers, just a big picture, what we've done. We've recruited about 600 volunteers who, and 250 plus of those have spent about 2,800 hours since 2018, recovering about 330,000 pounds of fresh food from 25 farms across Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. And we've distributed to about 30 hunger relief agencies, serving about 10,000 individuals per month. So to talk more about the food bank partnership and what we've done with the food bank, we started bringing significant amounts of food to the food bank last year for the first time. And it was really great because there was so much complexity happening, as you've already sort of heard about in terms of what was going on in pantries and restrictions and volunteers and things like that. And what we were able to do was move actually a lot more food last year than we'd ever moved before, because we were taking advantage of some of the distribution networks that the food bank has and that the actually Farm Fresh Rhode Island also has. And it really streamlined that. So we were bringing pallets of food to the food bank instead of 20 or 30 boxes to individual pantries. We were able to set up regular deliveries that were sort of expected. So we were always coming to the food bank on Tuesdays and Fridays with what we had available at that time. And that was nice to have sort of more of a routine around that. And in 2020, we distributed about 68,000 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables to the food bank, which was amazing. And again, a reflection of the food bank's infrastructure and then how our infrastructure has grown. So you'll see here our refrigerated truck, we call it Harvey the harvest truck, and having a lift gate and having refrigeration and having a truck of that size really made moving pallets around a lot easier. So we were able to sort of scale to meet the types of deliveries that the food bank wanted to have access to. We're really excited about partnering with the food bank in 2021. We have sort of increased our coordination and our planning. We're also going to be able to distribute gleaned produce, but also contracted produce. So we contract with some growers to grow specifically for food, for hunger relief. And we also purchased surplus. So we purchased surplus food last year that was due to drought and things like that. Our goal for this year is 110,000 pounds. So that would be a 60% increase of what was distributed to the food bank over 2020. So we're really looking forward to that, feeling excited about the season as it gets started. And yeah, really, really grateful for the partnership with the food bank and also with Farm Fresh Rhode Island. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Ava. It's just been amazing how your program has grown, and the plans for next year are even bigger, which is just awesome. And so if you mentioned the importance of volunteers, if there are folks in our audience who would like to volunteer, how should they get in touch?
So there's actually a link on the food bank's website on the volunteer page, which is really great. We finally managed to get that up. But on our website as well, if you just go to hopesharvest.org, there's a drop down for volunteer and you get on our mailing list. And then when we're ready to start the season, we'll send more information out about getting registered and getting trained up and all of that. But we manage all of that for volunteers. So it's super easy.
Thank you, Ava.
Thanks.
And now I want to introduce Pam Thurlow from Franklin Farm Community Garden. Franklin Farm has been helping the food bank for many years. I've watched as the farm has grown, which has been an amazing thing over the years. And now we know that in terms of the total contribution to the food bank of fresh produce, it's now over 100 tons of food, just amazing. And this year, Franklin Farm also became fundraisers for the food bank. With a match challenge, they were able to raise $20,000 for the food bank, which just, again, incredible. And we really, really appreciate that. So welcome, Pam, and I think Chip is with you too.
Hello, I'm having some technical problems. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
You're good.
Okay, I just can't get my video to run.
But just go ahead because we can see you and hear you.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew, for inviting Franklin Farm to be part of this discussion. One that I think is just incredibly important. Franklin Farm is an all-volunteer garden up in Cumberland. We are, for those of you who may know Cumberland, we are on Abbott Run Valley Road. And although we have about 2 acres in cultivation, we actually sit on a beautiful 65 acres in Cumberland. We're starting our 15th growing year. And over that period of time, for all the agencies and food bank, we have grown about 410,000 pounds of food. Much of that, of course, as Andrew said, goes to the food bank. We also send some of that to some of the local agencies in Northern Rhode Island. And I think that saves the transportation costs. Rather than ship everything to the food bank and then turn around and drive it back to Northern New England, we also distribute directly to those agencies. So just a little bit about the farm premises itself. The property on which we have our community garden is actually a very historic piece of property. It's only been in 2 families since 1776. And unfortunately, the last farmer who lived and farmed that property passed away in 2005. His name was Rhode Franklin, hence the name of the farm, Franklin Farm. And there were some folks, I think, in town that perhaps would have liked to have seen houses put on that property. But we had a group of volunteers who very much decided that we didn't need more homes in this area. What we needed was a good community garden. So they convinced the town that that property should be saved and that we should have a community garden in Cumberland. And we started growing that first year. Although I wasn't involved, we made, I'm sure, a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of weeds and not a lot of food, but every year has been a progression of more and more food that we've grown. Yeah, it's been awesome. Last year, we were fortunate enough to get a grant to purchase a vehicle. So now we can transport vegetables to the food bank every Tuesday and Friday mornings in our new, we call it the vegetable van. So I think there are a lot of things that have kind of pushed us forward over the years. One certainly is more mechanization. We've got a good tractor. We've been able to provide a drip irrigation system. and landscape fabric, which cuts down on the weeding immensely. So let's see. Yes, so last year was a challenge. We had to institute some protocols from the Rhode Island Department of Health, but I think it was a wonderful year. It was a wonderful year to get outside, even though we had to wear masks. It gave people a real opportunity to get out of their homes and do something meaningful. And we had a lot of volunteers that came along and helped us grow. Last year, we harvested and produced about 40,000 pounds. So it was a great year for us. And as Andrew mentioned, yes, the townspeople really wanted to step up and do something more. So we also did a financial program to the food bank. We had a matching funds challenge here in Cumberland, and that was quite successful. We were able to give, as Andrew mentioned, $20,000 to the food bank. So if Mother Nature cooperates, we're going to be putting crops in the ground in about a week. And I invite anyone who'd like to come out and get their hands in the soil to go onto our website at franklinfarmri.org and sign up and come work in the garden with us. It's great fun.
Thank you, Pam. What you do is just amazing. And I know it's a team of volunteers that makes this possible. We get a lot of questions at the food bank from towns and community groups that want to start a community farm. And of course, we want to encourage them. But first, we always send them to you.
Yes.
So that people actually understand the scope of the amount of work and the number of volunteers that you need and the organization that you need to make this happen efficiently. And, you all do just the best job I could ever imagine. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And I do want to add, we are always so interested in helping other towns or other groups establish gardens in their own towns. So by all means, if anyone has any questions about how to start a community garden, we would love to guide them along through the start of the process.
Thank you, Pam. Now I'd like to introduce Lisa Roth Blackman, our Chief Philanthropy Officer at the Food Bank. Hi, Lisa.
Morning, everybody. Hello.
I want to see if you have any questions.
We do. We have a bunch of questions. I'm going to start off with one comment from an old friend of the food bank, Vin Marzullo, who has worked with the AmeriCorps Vista program for a long time and just says he's delighted to see and hear compassionate friends who have been amazing Vista sponsors carry on the community engagement with volunteers. So thank you, Vin. So we have another question about how we maybe address this a little bit, but how does an agency get connected to local farms who donate? I don't know, Andrew, if you want to field that or then send it to Sheri or Ava.
Sure. The member agencies of the food bank, now we have about 160 member agencies that are running the food pantries and meal sites across the state. And a lot of the decision about whether they're going to be able to receive and distribute fresh, locally grown produce has to do with their capacity. One of the things that is a challenge around any fresh product is that it has to be distributed quickly. And that's one of the things that we're always making sure that we can do, that as soon as it's harvested, particularly locally, that it's getting right out to the agencies and they can make sure that it gets right to the families that need it, so it stays fresh. Ava, you can talk a little bit too about the agencies that you've been working with.
Yeah, it's a really great question. A lot of the agencies we work with tend to, as Andrew said, have a little bit more capacity. So they have staffing that is regularly and consistently there. They're distributing multiple days per week, and they often have refrigeration available. It doesn't mean that's the only folks that can get food from Hope's Harvest. I think what the question gets at is that they're the way we describe it is farmers have a job, they're growing food, right? And agencies have a job, they're distributing food. And a lot of times the ability to connect those two folks who are doing so much important work on their own is really challenging because the farm has maybe different hours or the agency isn't able to go pick up from the farm at a specific time. So we're here to support those relationships and make it easier. If you do have a local farm that you'd like to work with, we have a lot of sort of skill and aptitude around like kind of meeting farmers where they're at and being able to help negotiate some of those relationships. We're really excited to be working with specific farms and agencies that sometimes need a little help with like contracts, or if they wanted to figure out a distribution schedule, or the farm doesn't have the ability to distribute to that agency, we can sort of step in and provide a little bit of help around that. And also, once we get those relationships set up, if it's super easy and there's already somebody who can go pick up from the farm, we are super also happy to step back and let the farm and the agency work that out and continue that relationship independently of us. What we also find is that sometimes farms will have like so much of something. So particularly in August, they'll have maybe, 1,000 pounds of summer squash. And even if they have a great relationship with one agency, that agency just can't take all of that product. And then it ends up being a little bit frustrating for the farm. It ends up being a little bit frustrating for the agency. So that's one of the other roles that we play, is being able to distribute that product more widely out to other agencies who might also need that, even if they don't already have an existing relationship with a farm in their community.
And thank you, Ava. And in our work with Farm Fresh, after the federal program that we mentioned ended, we started this pilot where we have provided grants to some member agencies as a test. And what's happening now is that they are directly ordering food from Farm Fresh, and Farm Fresh is delivering directly to them. So food bank not in the middle just means that the food gets to the agencies faster. Just Sheri, I'll leave it to you to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So we have a wholesale distribution platform called Market Mobile, which initially was born to distribute mostly to wholesale customers like restaurants and universities, as I mentioned. And with the work with the food bank, we're able to work with agencies who order from us. We pay the farms what the farms need, and we get the orders, receive them, and take them directly to the pantries. So it allows farms to operate as they need to, make the sales, do what they normally do, just like a normal, like an average, wholesale customer. And then we're able to send the pantries what they need, when they need it, when they want it. And again, this gets into a little bit around culturally specific foods, or agencies like their clientele want this item instead of this item. And it allows to pinpoint the agency's need and capacity. So I think it's a system that works really well all the way around. It meets people with what they need when they need it.
Great. Well, that's a good segue to the next question, which is, what do the food bank, Farm Fresh, and Hope's Harvest need in order to scale this work? So Andrew, you mentioned that this is a pilot we've been doing, but we are strategically looking at trying to do more of it. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, part of it is money. It's that simple. Okay, done. No, certainly it is going to take fundraising and support from the community to make this program bigger. I think that earlier, I think Sheri was the one who said this is a win-win. This is what we're doing here, is clearly providing food, the healthiest food possible, to people in need. But we're also building a stronger local food system. And that should be something that everybody wants to see.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a statistic that I really love sharing, which is about our incentive programs at farmers markets. So we do this doubling program so that farms receive, the income from the incentive, the families receive the additional, the households receive the additional fruits and vegetables. We did a little, statistical analysis on who's redeeming those incentives with us, which farms. And the farms in our urban farmers markets, the farms that are redeeming those are almost exclusively urban farms or farms that are, new and beginning farmers, immigrant farmers. So people who are in the fabric of those communities, who likely live in those communities, are, feeding each other and also seeing that economic benefit right in that community. So helping farmers who are facing additional barriers. They don't have a family farm. They don't have as much capital to invest it. They're feeding their neighbors. It's really, happening and bolstering that neighborhood or that city or town. And
Eva or Pam, anybody have anything to add there?
I would just love thinking about scaling too. And I have to say that, we are operating in our sweet spot when we're distributing to pantries. Funding makes the world go round here, of course, makes it all happen, but also seeing additional farmers entering I always advocate for farmland access and new farms entering the economy. It's a real barrier here in Rhode Island. And, it's something we need to face if we're going to keep building the local food economy in a smart and strong way.
I would also say, like Sheri spoke to, that there's a very wide demographic of farms that can benefit from these types of programs. And so like the urban farmers, absolutely, but also larger scale farms. We worked with some bigger farms in Rhode Island this year, and we're able to provide a stable market for them to be able, when a lot of markets were really in upheaval. And I think that's a real benefit to our local economy as well, as a lot of this farmland is being held by farms that, multi-generational farms that could really use a market that isn't going to crash when supply chains get disturbed. And again, Andrew's absolutely right. It's having the funds available to purchase that product when it's there and when it's ready for us. And we don't have to be that farmers only market, but we can certainly be an available market in a way that they wouldn't necessarily expect, because I think that's just a really important piece. And if we are able to purchase that product, that's great for them and it's great for us, and it's a total win-win across the board. We have the will, we have the skill, we know how to do it, we have the models. It's really just resources to be able to do more of it.
Pam?
So I'd just like to jump in here and say, I'm thinking as I'm listening, I'm thinking about ways that perhaps Franklin Farm can be part of this effort. And I would like to perhaps get in touch with Ava and Sheri after this meeting and talk about maybe how we can support your efforts. Of course, everything we do is, you don't pay for anything from us. We're all volunteer. We don't charge for anything. So perhaps there are some ways that we can support that effort. So I look forward to perhaps talking about that a little more offline.
Fantastic. That's
Great. Thank you. Well, we have another question that picks up, Sheri, on some of the things you were just saying at the end of your most recent comments. Broadly, what are some opportunities for the future of Rhode Island's food system?
Yeah, so I would reiterate around farmland access as being an important aspect. It's hard for the, it's a very capital intensive thing to begin. So I always advocate for farmland access. Additional, we haven't talked about seafood, and it is, something we don't work with a great deal, but so much seafood is landed in Rhode Island, and there's very little opportunity to get that into the emergency food system or even into the retail food system in Rhode Island. So, we have a lot of really amazing, hardworking people who fisherwomen, and I'd love to see that, developed more completely here in Rhode Island. And I think working on some of the infrastructure around, 100 years ago, people almost exclusively ate from their local towns and their region, and a lot of factors changed that, but COVID, droughts, fires, all these things show that, food security comes from having a vibrant local food system. So making sure that we have a dairy who can process locally, making sure that we have people who are able to process animals to create, animal protein for the plate, the fisheries, just like working on our infrastructure that got taken apart over the decades.
Great. There's a question about whether there are mobile farm trucks that could pop up at places like health centers or local events. So Andrew, I wonder if you can talk about the one effort, I'm blanking on the name of it, that does go around to pantries, and then if anybody else has anything to add, just to address that question about getting this out in creative ways.
The program is Food on the Move that has distribution sites all over the state. Also, all fresh produce, and a clear goal of that program is similar to what we've been saying this morning, which is to just promote good nutrition and good health, make it easier for people to access healthy food.
Great. There's a question about whether Farm Fresh has a relationship with the lunch programs at public schools.
Farm to school is such a complex topic. And we have actually, during the pandemic, done a lot more work with the public school system in Rhode Island. It's a complicated landscape on having to do with a lot of corporations and food safety issues and concerns, I should say, around, where they're sourcing things from. So not as much as we would like. And there's an organization called Red Tomato, which is a fair food brokerage who were originally located in Massachusetts. They're moving in to our new building with us, and they have the power to broker with larger farms to larger customers, and we're hoping we'll be able to work with them to get more food into that particular value chain.
Got it. We have a question, just stepping back to sort of talk about the scope of the need for a minute. Can you provide an estimate of unmet needs and how much food insecurity there is? So we do have some good data on that. Andrew, if you want to address that one.
Yeah, in the, last summer during the pandemic, researchers at Brown did a survey throughout the state. And, we saw that 1 in 4 Rhode Island households reported that they did not have adequate food. And that is the highest level of food insecurity that we've seen in 20 years of tracking food insecurity and the prevalence of the problem. So the need, obviously tremendously high. The number of people coming for food assistance to member agencies of the food bank skyrocketed from about 53,000 people each month to, during the pandemic, 68,000 people each month. And, I always want to say that the member agencies of the food bank, the folks that everyone today who's speaking today works with, the folks at our member agencies did an amazing job staying open during the pandemic, being able to adjust so that they could keep their volunteers and staff safe and keep everyone who is coming for food assistance safe, but at the same time seeing so many more people, new people, never needed food assistance before, who were suddenly turning to us for help. And those organizations did a remarkable job meeting the need so that no one was turned away in the midst of the crisis.
Great. What were the biggest barriers to starting this sort of collaboration and pilot program before COVID?
Anybody?
Some of it was funding, I'll say, probably, just to be able to actually start to do local produce purchasing rather than sort of donated national wholesale produce that we were accessing mostly before and still are.
I'll give a shout out to the Department of Environmental Management and the work that they did bringing together people who were working on food security at the very beginning of shutdown. And they started having weekly calls. I think they were daily calls at the beginning. And it was really having everybody be together in that space that I think allowed for people to hear more about what other folks were doing, see how people were able to respond quickly. And I think that was a really powerful tool. And so you see really the impact that our local government, our state government can have when they're like bringing people together. I think that was really special. And I think that's continued. And I think that's been really great.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ava. Like when the federal program opportunity came to light, it was, very easy for us to be able to talk to the food bank and DEM and the Food Policy Council and everyone who supported our application and sort of cut through, because it was an emergency, we sort of got to cut through a lot of like normal business as usual kind of, inertia that happens. And so, there have been weird silver linings about the pandemic, and just these new relationships coming out of it really help. And also the level of support that Rhode Islanders have given to each other around, fundraising and working around things and learning new stuff that has been astounding.
And Sheri, I think, in the middle of the pandemic, also, you moved into your new facility.
Right. That was so we had been renting space in Pawtucket. We actually just finished last fall construction on our 60,000 square foot new building, which has a great deal more space for distribution, more loading docks, more room for Ava's trucks and our trucks, and a really great opportunity to start again. We scaled up during the pandemic, and so right now we're like, we still fit in our space, and when we say we can move as much food as we have funding to do so, we really mean it at this point in time. As far as Farm Fresh goes, that we have the trucks, the warehouse, the loading docks. We are, we're in a really good place for distribution right now.
Great. We have a question about how to get high school students engaged in this work and to experience harvesting. And would you, I don't know which one of you might feel this, ever provide transport to your site? So Pam, why don't you start talking about students? I know you work with a lot of students locally.
We do. And I think that's one of the ways that Franklin Farm has strengthened its connection to the community. Most high schools have something called service hours where they're required to donate time to a nonprofit. So we have a lot of students that come out and work at the farm to fulfill their service hours. And I think they find out when they get outside and they meet other teens, maybe they didn't know from the same school, but maybe they didn't know each other. It's kind of fun for them. And we have had some young people who perhaps started as coming to the farm to complete service hours and have stayed and become real volunteers for the time they're in high school. So that's been great. We also have a strong connection with the scouting community. So that's another way. Of course, everything we do is volunteer oriented. We have no paid staff. So we're always looking for, how to attract a wider swath from our community. So one way we do that is through the high school students and their families.
Ava, do you have opportunities for high school students?
So we have done some high school trips. We had a volunteer who was really passionate about leading trips for high school students in 2019, which was awesome. And we scheduled our trips. Sometimes with our delivery schedule, we have to do trips in the morning, but we were having this volunteer do trips in like the 3 to 5 p.m. window, which was really great for high school students. Last year, we said no one under the age of 18, just to sort of simplify our safety procedures and things like that. We would love to be able to have more school groups come out. We have an intake form for groups, and I'd be happy to send that out to anybody who wants to get in touch via the contact form on our website. I can let you know about that. And we just have like a couple questions about the groups and stuff like that, capacity and things like that. Transportation is really tricky right now, and getting people on like buses together and organizing that. It's definitely something we were thinking about in terms of being able to bring more food pantry guests to come out and do cleaning trips with us. And that was some work that we were trying to pilot with Tufts Health Plan Foundation, actually, with guests at the Olneyville Food Center. And then the pandemic sort of put a halt to that, but we would really love to bring that back into the fore once vaccination rates increase and we feel like it's a safer thing to be able to do.
Thank you. We have a question that probably I'll have all of you address separately is, can you be more specific about the annual amounts of money needed in both the short term and the long term to bring programs to scale? So what does scale look like when we think about this? Andrew, maybe you want to start first in terms of some of our thinking for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, the pilot that we described with Farm Fresh Rhode Island is costing about $100,000. We'd love to triple that. And, you know, I also just want to, again, plug the Bonus Bucks program through Farm Fresh. And, you know, I think donations for that program are really important too. Sheri, I turn it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have not, there are ways that we can promote that program and utilize that program that we don't have the funding to do that right now. Like I said, we're distributing about $190,000 per year right now, but there are programs we've done in the past with payments for shoppers to get a credit for the end of the month when their SNAP benefits wear out. We call it Bridge the Gap, that we can't fund right now. And again, that would probably be, we could do up to $100,000 in them because people's SNAP benefits run out and they're not able to access the fresh fruits and vegetables they may need for their families. Again, we don't limit the incentive that people can do up, hundreds of dollars at a time if that's what they have on their SNAP card. Right now, we're seeing people with pandemic EBT, which is distributed to families with public school students. Again, the need keeps going up and up, and we haven't reached the upper edge of that. We could do promotion through the Department of Human Services and just really, but we've been cautious about how quickly we can roll out so that we don't get, ahead of ourselves and reach a point where we're out of funding.
Pam or Eva, anything to add?
No, we're in a very different situation because scale to us is not a financial issue. It is strictly a labor issue, a volunteer issue. So I guess we're kind of in an enviable position, but I don't know, maybe not so. So we don't really have any limitations other than those of people.
Got it.
We also could probably utilize a lot more volunteers and probably get out in the field more if we had more staff. I have recently been running these numbers and looking at a spreadsheet right now. And if we wanted to do a 25% increase year over year, and some of this would actually include the contracts that are coming from the food bank or potentially other sources, it would be about $1.7 million, and that would lead to about 2 million pounds of food delivered over the next 5 years at a cost of about 80 cents per pound or 22 cents per serving, which is a great value. And what that looks like is some of that is increase in staff, some of that is increase in infrastructure. A lot of that is increase in farmer payments and money that's actually just going straight to farmers to be able to purchase food. So a huge amount of that is passed through. I believe the amount that would go to farmers would be about $1 million of that. And that's a big economic impact for our local growers.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, we have a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to do a question here, picking up on what Sheri was talking about with doubling the SNAP dollars. And Andrew, maybe you can just field just a more general question about SNAP, which I think people understand goes to food insecure people, and then that money goes to food providers and farmers. How is SNAP funded? So maybe just a really brief, how does the SNAP program work?
So the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which long ago was called the Food Stamp Program, is completely federally funded. And it's an entitlement program so that if someone is eligible in Rhode Island and, there's your income for your household has to be just around the poverty level, just a little bit above poverty level in order to qualify. But if your household does qualify, you can apply and you're guaranteed to get those benefits that are given to a household on an EBT card, an electronic benefits transfer card, that you take to a supermarket or a farmer's market and can use right there. And since most people these days are using credit cards, the EBT card really reduces the stigma of using SNAP benefits. In the supermarket, the person in line in front of you is going to use a credit card or an EBT card. And that has been a really important improvement in the program over the last decade. The reduction in stigma, the making sure that people are getting the benefits every single month, particularly in Rhode Island. That was a challenge a few years ago, but the system is working again. And the most important thing for folks to know is that in Rhode Island currently, the program is bringing in about $240 million a year in federal benefits, all of which are being spent at supermarket, grocery stores, and farmers markets, our local economy. So the program functions in two ways. It helps people to be able to afford the food that their family needs, and it's a boost to the local economy.
Great, thank you. I have one last question in our last minute or two here, and I don't know about this, so I'm going to see if any of you do. Can you talk about the Rescue Rhode Island food bill and how that gels with your current and end goal operations? So I'm not sure if any of you can speak to that. I'm not familiar with the bill.
The question talks specifically about controlled community land trusts, democratically controlled community land trusts. We've contracted with cooperative farms. So we contract with Osamequin Farm, which is out in Seekonk. And there's multiple farms operating on that property, and we're able to provide contracts to those farmers to grow food for hunger relief and provide sort of a reduced wholesale rate, but something that's competitive and makes it sort of worthwhile. So I think anyone who's growing food who wants to be able to participate in this system, whether it be, community growers or, larger farms, or anybody should be able to step into that if we have the resources to be able to support those types of farm operations. We're agnostic. Whatever type of farm wants to grow food for hunger relief, we're there for it. So I think that would be great. And I think it's a really neat piece of legislation that has a lot of great potential impacts on our community.
I totally agree that, we work with all sizes and shapes of farms, from cooperative farms, also, Southside Community Land Trust, African Alliance of Rhode Island, Sankofa. We work with micro farmers up to the large scale, farms in Rhode Island. That most farms in Rhode Island have 3 or 4 different types of business plans they're working on. They're working on wholesale, retail, processing, like farm stands, farmers markets. And so, Farm Fresh and Hope's Harvest, work accommodate all sizes and all sort of management styles into what we do, because it would be foolish and strange for us to say, not you, but you, we want to involve the entire community.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we're just about out of time. So Andrew, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, I know. I just want to thank everyone, Sheri, Ava, Pam, and Chip in the background there for being with us this morning and speaking to us. It's been really informative and helpful. I want to thank our Spanish interpreter, Dave Moreno, for helping us this morning too. And thanks to everybody who joined us. We're going to be having a forum in June with guest speaker Mark Bittman, who wrote for the New York Times and has now written a book about the food system in general and the history of food in the United States. It's a really interesting book. He'll be a great presenter again, because he's coming back to Rhode Island. We had him actually speak at a food bank event a number of years ago. And the date for that, Lisa, is?
June 10th, I believe, at noon.
Okay. Join us for that too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.